And we're live yet
Okay.
again.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome to the HVAC 2.0 show. Joined with us again with Ken, Reedy, and Jason. How's everybody doing?
Awesome.
Doing well.
Yep. Time left in the day for things to go horribly wrong.
Oh, yeah. Just enough time to really screw some stuff up. That's
Yep.
perfect amount of time. Well, so how things been going with you, Reedy? You're usually the one that has to bail out a little early, so we'll give the mic to
Well,
you if you have some things you'd like to talk about.
I had a comfort consult that I did in November of
Okay.
last year, and it was I didn't know how it went. As I was talking to the people, the husband wasn't there. The wife wanted to argue about every single possible thing. Um, I the way I do it is I go and do a second meeting. It's just a second visit. It's a lot of information we need to cover, and um, she had some specific goals. Blower door wasn't too bad. HVAC was oversized. The duct was ratty, and her attic was in poor shape. Um, so, anyways, I went over the report with her. I gave her, as I'm giving her the evidence, so to speak, the pictures and all of that stuff when we went over it.
And this was at the comfort consult that you're.
This was at the second meeting, the
Okay.
second part. So I do my blower door and all the data and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I get all that in the first part. I come back 4 or 5 days later, and we go over everything.
Okay. What was some
Husband
of
was,
their pain points? What was some of their goals and problems they were having?
yeah. So the master bedroom um, was not comfortable. That was one of the things. The son's bedroom was not comfortable, and she wanted to do some things to get rid of dust. And
Mm.
so, she had I think she scored a 24. Um, she was
Okay.
interested, and I charged her $595. Wasn't that crazy? He put that up. Are they free, Reedy? And I said I charge 595 at the same time. No, they're definitely not free, because if you do a comfort consult, you're going to spend some time. In this instance, I spent I think I spent about 2 hours there the first go around. I spent about an hour gathering and processing all the information, and another hour and a half. So I've got 4.5 hours into it. So I went over. We began to go over the pain points, the answers to the comfort quiz. Um, Her house is 4,200 square feet. She's got a basement. Half of it, approximately half of it, is basement, over a crawl space. So that's a little weird. The crawl space isn't really but about 1.5 feet tall. So I don't know why they did that, but that's what they
Hmm.
did. And
What's
in
in the
any
Well,
closet?
that's
event,
interesting.
what's in the crawl space is HVAC units,
Oh, nice.
2 of them.
Whew.
So
How big's the
you
house?
know, it's 4,200 square feet.
Oh, that's a big one. What was the blower door number?
Is 5,000,
5,000. Okay.
5,093. So I
Okay.
did some zonal on it, and her basement, the basement, of course, the crawl space it was not, they said it was encapsulated, but it really wasn't. Um,
Yeah.
it just wasn't awesome like that. And they had ratty duct systems and all this and all that. And the zonal from down to up was 26 pascals.
Hmm.
And, we talked about one of the rooms, it's 26 pascals. The one side of the basement is right under one of those rooms, right? And so um, they are not moving to one unit. They're still going to have three.
Oh,
So
dang,
we
they had
down
three.
They have
Ooh.
3 units. Yeah, the basement has 4 tons in it. 4 tons on 2,100 square feet.
And that's
Yeah,
largely
no.
for cooling, right? That's
Yeah,
how
well, it's just how whoever built it, that's what they put in. They bought the house from someone.
Yeah.
She wasn't concerned about that at all because nobody lives down there. And she's popped
500
a
square feet
dehumidifier in there and it rolls.
per ton.
Yeah. Yeah. So what we did is we suggested that she fixes her duct system. Total pull out, put back in. We suggested she went upstairs with a green speed of 3 ton. She didn't want to go any lower than that. We suggested she opens her doors to her bedrooms or adds returns, and fixed her attic, air seal, insulate the attic. So nothing. Every moment during that go over, when I went over, I can't keep the doors. I have to keep the doors closed. And if I want to open my windows, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And, all this and all that. She had a return that was right beside of her fireplace. And of course, you can't do that. You shouldn't do that. You can't do it, but that's the way the house was. They had put that fireplace in after the house was built, and they had a return sitting right there and didn't move it.
What kind of fireplace?
It started out being a wood burning fireplace, but now it's a vent-free fireplace.
Ooh.
And they don't use the fireplace. She said, "What do you got to get? What do you think? And you have to get rid of the return for?" I said, "Because it's a safety. It's safety."
Yeah.
And so like I say, she didn't want to get rid of the return. She didn't want to enlarge the return. She didn't want to do anything. And I said, "Listen," I said, "you paid me $595. I said, every answer I say to you, you've got something to the contrary to say." I said, "What did you pay me this money for if you didn't intend to do anything?" I said, $595 is a lot of money. And I said, if you didn't intend to do anything, I don't understand why you paid this for. And she goes, "Because I want to fix it. I want to fix it." And I said, "Well, okay, then you're going to have to give up some of this stuff." Because she also would put her air conditioning down to 68. And that was in the basement. She said nobody was down there. She tried to use that as a dehumidifier. And so we let that, I gave her the report, didn't think there was going to be anything of it. And lo and behold, at the maybe the 10th or something, I get a email from a husband who wasn't there during the entire time. He called me. He goes, "I'm so sorry we didn't get back in touch with you." My wife, all she was trying to do was trying to get someone who would come and answer her questions in the cheapest possible method, and you have to excuse her, all this.
Wow.
So I said, "Okay." I said, "What is it that you want?" I said, "You've got the report." I said, I gave you the report. You got all the photos. You got the synopsis. You got everything." And he goes, "Well, I didn't get a chance to sit down with you, and I want to talk with you." So we did. We talked on the phone, and he wasn't going to budge on the units because he said, "I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to do it like that. I'm just going to do it what I want to do upstairs, downstairs. I don't care about. We got a dehumidifier. It works." I said, "Okay, fine." So he did replace the duct system. He did put in a green speed, fresh air, high efficiency filtration, and he did fix the attic. And that ended up being $50,000. Now, probably what he's going to do on the downstairs units is they're probably going to take, because the load on the downstairs, they didn't give me energy, so I couldn't really do energy use. That's kind of why we stuck with the 3 ton up there. I think with all the work we're going to do, I think we could really get down to closer to 2 tons. But
So you used a
the
3 ton
downstairs,
upstairs.
yeah. 3-ton green speed, and it'll
Was that what
it'll
was already there?
modulate.
A 3-ton?
No, there was a 4-ton
That was the 4.
already
Okay, that was
there.
the 4.
Yeah, and then they got 2 more 2-tons downstairs.
Yeah.
So he said, well, when should I change those? And I said, I said, right now. And he said,
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. And so what he's probably going to do downstairs is he's probably going to go with a 2-ton, and we'll just, the duct on one side's in junk shape. The duct on the other side is in great shape. And I told him, at your nearest convenience, you need to change this unit. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to have anybody stay down there and be comfortable. And he said, okay, well, I'll do it, but it's going to be later. And so he did it. We're starting the job on the 1st of April. $50,000. That was a good job.
Nice.
I feel good about it.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be good for him. And I can't wait to see how he acts with that 3-ton versus the 4-ton clunker that he had. And it was mismatched. It was a train, and somebody went in there and put a carrier air handler. And I mean, I know you can do that, but gee, so I had a good time with that job.
And so he's going from single stage to variable capacity as well.
Single stage to full variable. That's right. By the way, that 3-ton green speed is a cold climate heat pump. And so what ultimately, I take the specs on it. It gives 36,000 BTUs at 5 degrees. And the 5-stage gives 0 BTU at 5 degrees.
Oh yeah.
So, I don't know. I think I told Jason about this, the cold climate aspect of it. That's phenomenal, because it really means his heat load was, what was his heat load? I don't remember what his heat load was. I don't remember, because it's been a while ago, but his cooling load was like 28,000 BTUs without energy use. I didn't have any energy use to go off of.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if we would have had the energy, then what we would have ended up seeing is that they would have been probably 20 to 22,000. And, they'll see that as they go along. And that means the downstairs unit, he's got a 2-ton, kind of one of those. It's not a crossover, but it's one that's sort of like that. And it's a carrier. It's the one you can put with the FV blowers. So probably what we're going to do, if that thing's still working, is probably just use that thing for the downstairs, because the downstairs, the load was really low as well.
Is it an actual basement downstairs, like below grade basement, or?
No, some of it is, and some of it's not. And then they, like I say, they built.
Then they got cross space.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like that. Either it's a basement and it's all basement, or it's a basement and a crawl space beside of it. But this one is a basement with a crawl space below it. And so I think what they did is, I think they had such basement, and I think they just raised the floors up and put a floor joist system over top of it.
What's the base in the crawl space? Is that on slab?
Yeah, it is. So that's why I think that's what they did.
I think that's
never seen that before, but
So you think they jacked the whole house up and built a basement under it?
No, I think that they had. I think they had a basement, and I think
10-foot basement, and they shortened it.
Yeah,
brought the floor up.
That's what I
equipment underneath.
Gotcha.
It might have been a 12-foot basement.
Yeah,
because there's enough room to get an air handler and me under there, and I'm not I'm not Tanner. I got a little extra.
They had horizontal air handlers in an 18-inch or a crawl space.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't sound like you'd get around it at all.
Well, you can't. You can't.
Yeah.
Not much. I mean,
17 and a half air handler, 17 and a half inch air handler, and an 18-inch crawl space.
yeah, I mean, you can't. And so
Right.
it was
Yeah.
bizarre.
You build your way out. We've seen
Yeah,
that.
I was
Yeah.
kind of like this, but praise God I made it. Anna did me a free quote. I did the free quote. Actually, I did the free quote on Thursday. I did a free quote for this fellow, and he was asking. He, we talked about everything. We did the static pressure. We watched the videos. We did all of that stuff, and he wanted to know what's the difference between 5-stage and a green speed? What's the difference? And the difference is that's where I got those capacities. On that 5-stage, it doesn't have much. The capacity isn't good after 17, but it was still reasonably well. Still a lot better than most other, but it can't compare to what that green speed did. And so.
Yeah.
I don't know what he's decided to do. He wanted me to come over and go over filtration and fresh air and that stuff with him tomorrow and his wife because she wasn't there. So I'm going to go over. That's going to end up being somewhere between, if on the low end, if he doesn't do any of the filtration, fresh air, it's going to be, and he goes with the 5-stage, it's going to be about 20. If he goes with the filtration, fresh air, and the green speed, it's going to be about 30. So you pick. That's kind of where we're at. But I think that's going to turn out well too. I used the likely load range with him, but he wanted to really know about the heat, and I told him the only way I can tell you that is if you give me your energy numbers, let me do a blower door. I don't care that much about it because it costs money. I said, okay. I said, then this is kind of where you stick. And he had a 3-ton, and so I told him if you want the range, you're going to have to go with a 3-ton, and he was 2,600 square feet, and normally that's a stretch, but he had a 3-ton already, so and he didn't have any complaints, and he only sets the thermostat setting to 77 in cooling.
Yeah. Well, it's also important, especially when using the likely load range, if you know roughly what equipment they're looking at, I mean, that makes a big difference because like in this scenario of a fairly decent sized house, I mean, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to go down to a 2-ton versus from a 3-ton of where they're currently already at, because it's like, what's the bottom end difference? A few thousand BTUs. That's not going to be that big of a difference, on a house that big. So as a scenario where it makes in that scenario, it's like, sure, you didn't do blower door, you didn't do load calc and all this other stuff, but 90% of the time you're going to fall on that 3-ton mark anyways. And we know this, we've done it a bunch of times.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, really at the end of the day, it saved him some money on getting equipment that he's already going to get anyways. And if something's not right, he can always go back and fix the house because that's going to be a house problem, not an equipment problem.
That's right. That's the beauty of that. Because if I would have went down and been wrong, it would have been embarrassing, and we'd have had to eat the money. But I knew he had a 3-ton, and the 3-ton that he had was old and junky, nothing like what we're talking about putting in. So
yeah.
To Jason, yes, it was outside of the envelope. The ductwork was, and so I know there's some talk. There's been some talk about testing duct and all that. Well, I did a static pressure test on his stuff, and it's been a few days. I don't remember what it came up to, but it was, I do. It was 0.32. It was 0.32. And so it's not great. It's reasonable. If he wants to get the filtration, we're going to upsize one of the returns. The other side of the return, he's got what he's got right now is he had a 14-inch flex and he had another 14-inch flex, but one side of his duct had like several runs on it. The other side didn't have any runs on it. And so when we talked about colder, hotter rooms, he said he did have some, and he attributed that to him closing the door. The reality of it is, and that may have something to do with it, but if you're pulling more air than you're putting in, you gotta know. So we can take and we can have him open the doors, have it run at lower capacity, reduce the static pressure, and that duct being outside of the envelope, unless it's just a terrible leaker, he already knows that it's outside of that. He already knows he could fix it, but he didn't want to. So it's going to be one of those things. Yes, you could fix it. Do you want to? And no, whoever said you should do a duct blaster, I have 2 of those at our office, and I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I don't know of anybody who would do that. I think the only person who would do that is someone who has got some sort of ulterior motive, or just trying to gild the lily and make themselves look like they have shining things coming from behind them, angelic or something like that. No, that's unnecessary.
Yeah, which I think I'll speak on a little bit of this as well, because obviously there's been some talk in regards to most specifically true flow grid and duct analysis and electrification, and I've not stayed super up in it with all the comments of everything on this regard, so I may get a few things kind of misplaced, but I do know that duct blasters were also brought up for if the ducts were outside of the envelope. Should you be doing that if you're doing electrification? Well, for that question in particular, I would say at first you have to ask the question, what are we doing right now? Okay, we're doing electrification, and the ductwork's on the outside. So does it play a part? Yes, it plays a part. But the question then becomes, is there a single path that you must go about this in order to do an electrification? And I would say no, because we all know when it comes to especially, ductwork that's outside of the envelope, at the end of the day, can the ductwork handle what you're going to put in? Well, odds are if you're doing an electrification, you're going to be downsizing. I mean, I doubt, does anyone here not agree with if you're pulling out a furnace and AC, odds are you're probably going smaller than what was there. Does that
And probably
seem fair?
improving the envelope to an extent too.
Yes. So if you're doing that, really what it comes down to is is this ductwork big enough in order to handle the current system? And if you're downsizing, most of the time it's going to be yes. So really, in order to kind of test this out, you really just need to know what's your static pressure look like of the current system, and what's the size of the ductwork based on what equipment you're going to be putting in. This is something very simple that you can look at and go, okay, what do we have, and is it going to work for the system we're about to put in? If that's going to check out, well, then the next question is going to be, okay, well, now there's the equation of duct leakage. Because if you have really leaky ductwork and you put in a heat pump after you just pulled out a massively oversized gas furnace and it gets cold, well, yes, you're going to have excessive strip heat usage. But it doesn't mean that every single time that you have to do it to every single one, because that's not something we can do for free, nor should you. Now, if you sell the job and you want to do it as like a QC at the end and go, I just want to verify, and then if it's not right, then I'll offer to the homeowner, hey, we've also noticed your ductwork's extremely leaky. Would you like us to seal that up for you for X price? Sure, you can do that on your electrifications if you would like to. Is it necessary? It's debatable, because really that comes down to the discussions you're having with the homeowners and the expectations that you're setting. I just don't believe that you have to go in and you have to test every single little thing that could potentially be wrong with it before you do any work. As long as you're being transparent and setting these expectations up front. Because
Yeah.
the tricky part is once you go down that, okay, I'm going to test everything, and I'm not going to have these discussions with homeowners because, if I'm not going to do it right, I should just walk away. The problem with that is it's putting you in a spot to where now you're going to own 100% of this outcome, whether it's within the scope of work that you're going to be doing or whether it's not. If you approach it that way and the shell has a lot of problems and that's the real problem after you put the system in, well, if you approach it this way, you're going to have to go fix that. You're going to have to go fix the house. You can't go back to the homeowner and say, oh, yeah, I didn't mention about all these potential problems you could have had because we weren't testing we didn't turn your house into a science project. So now you're going to have to pay me X amount of dollars to fix the shell because we just overlooked it to begin with. They're not going to be too happy with that.
Mm-hmm.
But now
go ahead. Go ahead. Where does it end? I mean,
exactly.
So we do a blower door for free. That costs $4,000 to $5,000 to get the machine. We do a duct test for free. That costs $2,000 to get the machine. What then? Do we have to do a traverse? Are we going to do a duct balance? Are we going to do a room by room? Where does it end? They're not asking for that. There's the motive. You have to wonder why the motive. If they're not charging for it, they may not be charging for it right then, but they are charging for it on the other side. And I mean, how many of us have a duct blaster? How many of us have done duct tests? If you do that, you know that depending on how many runs there are, depending on how well the tape sticks, depending on all these other things, are you going to run a blower door and do in the duct tester at the same time, or how are you going to do it? You could be spending 2 hours here. No homeowner wants to spend that much time doing an estimate. No one does.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I mean, it's ludicrous.
Yes. Yeah. Me personally, when I use my duct blaster, it's when if I'm doing a change out and I'm doing improvements to the ductwork, such as if we're going to be if there's noticeable places where, hey, like this ductwork's falling apart, would you like us to, pull the flex tight and trim off the excess and redo some stuff? I'll do a before and after for, when I'm actually doing work to the ductwork. If I'm not doing work to the ductwork, well, then I'm just going to go in with, I'm going to set these expectations of, hey, just so you know, you wanted me to change this equipment. We're focused on just the equipment. I'm not even looking at your ductwork when doing this. So there could potentially be some issues here. If you would like us to investigate this and check it out, here's the price it would be for that. But you may not need it. And if something happens and you do need it in the future, you can always take it. Like, we don't have to do it this very second. We can do that later. And so,
I mean, just like Reedy's free quote that he did the other day, the guy had issues, but he didn't want to do a blower door because it costs money. So,
right.
You're going to do it for free just because he doesn't want to spend the money for it? No, you're not.
Yeah.
No,
and you should
want to.
Yeah. Well, it really
Cecil. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say what it really kind of boils down to is it's that tricky, slippery slope of, one more test of it's, let's do this test. Like you just mentioned, Reedy, it's like, let's do this and let's do this and let's do this. And it's like,
where
okay,
do you draw the line?
Yeah, you have to draw that line. But at the end of the day, we have to realize that we can't be responsible for 100% of everything with the house when it comes to comfort. Because unless we're testing 100% of things, there's something that's going to be outside of our control. And so the question is, are we going to be transparent about this to the homeowner, or are we going to hide it from them, keep it secret, and just cross our fingers and hopes it don't bites us in the ass? Because if it does, we're going to have to pay for that. And to kind of take it then back to the true flow grid of, should you be doing this on every single install or every single electrification, or however you want to word that, I'm of the belief that there are a few tiers when it comes to airflow testing of equipment. I think if you check static pressure, you're getting a really good look of the system itself. Take a look at the blower wheel, check your static pressure, and get a good idea of what's going on. I think that is a minimum. Like, you should be doing that, or rather, you should be offering that when it comes to doing something along. Like, if that's what you're going for, the static pressure test. True flow grid, is it better than the static pressure test? Yes. But to me, the way that I look at this is I go, okay, what do we need for a static pressure test? $150 tool to
Right.
that's a good tool if you spend 150 bucks. So it only takes $150 in order to offer this. And let's say we go from on a scale of 1 to 10, 0 to an 8 in terms of usefulness of the metric that we're taking. To me, when you go to TrueFlow, we're really only going from an 8 to a 10, and we're doing that at a cost of $1,500 to $2,000.
Right.
So our cost is going up, tenfold nearly.
For what?
Uh,
For nothing.
well,
A manometer,
Well,
a true
yeah,
flow grid.
yeah,
Well, I mean, I understand that,
Oh,
but I'm saying for
oh,
what?
how
yeah,
much more precision?
Right. I mean, how
yeah. Well, so
you get a direct
it,
measurement of CFM versus
yeah. So here's the tricky part: is it kind of becomes like it's not a question of whether or not static pressure versus true flow, if it's technically more accurate and if it gives you a more precise look at what's going on, because it
oh,
absolutely does.
yeah,
The question
100%.
really becomes is how useful is that? That's
Only
the real
to it.
question.
I mean, it's useful to me, I guess. I mean, but like talking to a homeowner, like
Yeah.
they don't know what the hell
Yeah.
any of
Yeah.
that. I mean,
Well, now I will say when it comes to that, like you should be like if you're checking static pressure, show them the 90-second video. It's easy to kind of like illustrate like, hey, here's what's going on. It's just I'm not saying uh test like no testing versus true flow. I'm looking at just the difference in static pressure versus true flow of really
right.
going, okay, if I give you this, yellow or green, yellow, red range, and here's where your measurements coming out for your equipment. Like,
Hmm.
what's the difference between just that versus a true flow report? Now, and I
Right.
will say, now that they've updated the report to where you can actually adjust their values to where you can actually show a system that's performing poorly as being poor, their reports are actually useful now. Before they adjusted that, and you could have a 0.79 static pressure that was showing not too bad or still be showing in the green.
Right.
That was abysmal and it was utterly useless.
Yeah.
And I was saying that for a long time. So at least that is fixed. So it's useful. It's not bad. It's just
No,
again the
I
question just comes like it's you're spending thousands of dollars for a tool,
it's going to
and
give you 0.2.
yeah, like how much more value are we extracting out of that? Now,
Right.
I have one and I
No, I
use
mean,
mine pretty consistently, especially for startups and stuff.
right, and
Uh,
that's what I was getting at is like once somebody's paid me to do whatever, then
mhm,
when I go to commission it, then sure I'll use the best tools at my disposal. But
yes,
if you're talking about going out for free on a free quote with a salesman that a lot of times they're paid straight commission, they don't even have a salary in their own
yeah,
vehicle, and you're going to say they got to buy this $2,000 tool that they don't understand either, or you're gonna train a Walmart employee in 3 hours to be able to do all this shit. That's what rubs me the wrong way.
yeah. Well, it just kind of comes down to this perception of mindset. There is the mindset of if there's a problem with quality of work, then we just need to throw more tools at it, or we need to incorporate more things. And I mean, there is some validity to a degree of that mindset of like obviously we all here know that there is extreme usefulness of the blower door. It's
Right.
a tool that you really need to have access to one if you want to be able to say you can walk into a house and solve any problem within that house. Like you need access to it.
Right.
But as we've kind of found out with the free quote process versus the comfort consult, you don't necessarily have to use it every time to have good results, and to have good results where you have good outcomes where the client's extremely happy and you end up in the same place in terms of the work that you did. So
Hmm.
when it comes to that, I mean, that really becomes like an efficiency question of, if you got a 10-step process to deliver high quality results, and if you can delete 40% of your steps, if you can delete 4 steps and
You're gonna
still
make
achieve
more
the
money.
same, and still achieve the same goal, you should be deleting those steps. So it's like, are we testing because the test has incredible value that can't be replaced, or are we testing for the sake of testing? And that's where the problems can kind of get, because if you're someone who you're a nerdy tech, you like doing the stuff, or you're a nerdy salesman, you like doing the actual test, you like show them the report. That's different than trying to give somebody who doesn't care anything about that and get them to do the same thing. Because at the end of the day, it comes down to uh, giving, delivering results, not testing things and the process in which you went through in order to get there to begin with.
And another big point is like, you can do all the free testing that you want to do, and the homeowner is not going to give a flying,
No.
you know. I mean, you can do it for free. If there's some kind of pain there where they're opening their checkbook to pay for that diagnostic, then at least they might spend some time thinking about it. But otherwise, they're going to take it to the next guy and be like, look, can you do this for cheaper?
Here's another thing that Jason Cecil brought up just a few things ago. He said, we are talking about a heat pump that is much more sensitive to airflow. That's not true.
Not at all.
That is not true at all. As a matter of fact, a gas furnace is way more susceptible to poor airflow.
Yeah. Like,
I mean, that's just someone who doesn't know.
Oversized. Yeah. When they're terribly oversized, as they always are.
Yeah, you got 100,000 BTU furnace that's running 1.3 inches of total external, and then the actual load is 36,000. You put a 3-ton heat pump, and all of a sudden you're magically at under 0.5 or better.
Magic.
Yeah.
And it makes it. I mean, it makes duct. Even if you have duct leakage outside the thermal envelope, it makes it less impactful because there's not as much pressure in the duct.
Right.
Yeah. Well, there's a few things there, and again, because one of the points that I did read, that it was, I mean, it's a fair assessment, but the problem is it's rooted in a poor foundation of executing the electrification to begin with, because one of the points that I'd seen in regards to this was, okay, if you have a 60,000 BTU furnace and you're electrifying, and your goal is to match the heating output with this new heat pump that the gas furnace did, what are you going to do? You're going to tear out the 60,000 and you're going to put in a 5-ton. And the difference in airflow in that 60,000 BTU furnace and a 5-ton heat pump is way different. The 5-ton heat pump is going to be moving a lot more airflow. Now, that is true.
Yeah, that was a good point.
Yeah, but the problem is that it is rooted in this foundational flaw of that if you're going to be doing electrification, that you should be sizing your heating output to the same size furnace that was currently there.
Right.
It doesn't matter. I mean, because then it's kind of becoming okay, which problem is the bigger problem? Because you have such a laundry list of problems that you're going to have with that to begin with. I don't think airflow is really what I would be concerned with at that point.
No, and in those LinkedIn, and LinkedIn, I agree, is terrible for them. It's so bad. Yeah. I had so much trouble finding what I was trying to reply to, I haven't been back on it since since yesterday. But now I lost my train of thought. God, darn it! What was I talking about?
Airflow.
Airflow, furnaces.
Oh, well, heat pump. Upsizing a heat pump for heating load.
Yes.
Yeah, but it was past that.
Still?
It'll come back to me.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Oh, what I brought back. Okay. What I kept bringing up over and over was the problem's not testing, or it's not heat pumps use more airflow. The problem is grossly oversized equipment. It doesn't matter if you're in Canada or if you're in Mexico. The point is that everything's grossly oversized, and that's why I mean, this is a symptom, not the root cause that they're trying to talk about
Yeah.
solving with this tool that
Yeah.
costs $2,000.
Which is
Yeah.
where the likely load range brings us back into reality.
Right.
So show the person, look, here's what a good house would need. Tell me if your house is good, mediocre, or bad. And if
Yes.
you go with just to repeat what's been said so many times, if you choose smaller equipment and it's not enough, you can always improve the envelope, improve the house, bring the house into where it should be instead of trying to match a bad house with bad equipment.
Yes. And so really, like, and this was kind of a conclusion that I kind of come to thinking about this in regards to this debate, is that really the discussion was placed wrongly, in that it's not, if you're doing an electrification, should you be using a true flow every single time for free, yes or no? Like, that's, to me, that's not really the question. Because that's a, is true flow useful? Yes. Should you be doing it every time? Debatable. The real question is, if you're doing an electrification, there are things that you should be doing in order to ensure you're going to have good results. And that starts with the right sized equipment. And that starts with, what's your sales process? Do you have a sales process that you go out and you sell, like, oh, I'm doing electrification, 60,000 BTU furnace. Okay, we're going to give you a 5-ton heat pump just because we're afraid of, cold weather, and we're afraid of heat pumps. If that's how you're starting your process, you're going to have terrible results no matter what. So the real question isn't, should we be doing true flow on every single call? It's, how are we going to approach this electrification with, in a way that we can have good results to where we can size equipment properly? And
Heat strips.
how can we do it in a way that we don't have to be doing blower doors and load calcs for free every single time somebody mentions electrification?
Auxiliary heat.
Yeah. So that's where, kind of tying it back into likely load range, where I think this is where the real, like, foundational thing is, and where the real benefit is, hey, if somebody's looking to do this, have a good method, have this likely load range to go, hey, here's what your house looks like. If we're going to be in this green section, and we're okay with, if something's not quite right, we'll need to improve the house to bring it to the equipment. We can start out on the right foot with the right equipment. And if we do that, all you really need to do is check static pressure to begin with, because you don't have to do a true flow. You don't have to do a duct analysis every single time to ensure that the ductwork's going to work. We can look at, okay, what's the ductwork size? What's our static pressure? And what was there before? And what are we going in with after? With that minimum amount of information, you can discern whether or not it's something that you can work with, or if it's something that's going to need to be addressed, and you can address it appropriately. But it's all about starting out on that right foot, starting out with the right equipment. So then that way, if you have to make any changes afterwards, we're making improvements every single time. We're not redoing work. To me, that's the real, what we really should be focusing on. Not, should we be doing true flow and duct blaster and all this other stuff.
I agree.
It's similar to going to the hospital. You've severed a digit, and they're going to want to run a colonoscopy and an MRI and an EKG to fix an obvious problem. All of those things are there for when they're needed, but until they're needed, we don't have to bring out all the big guns. That's why people don't like the healthcare system anymore.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's along the same lines of, like, why wouldn't we just start checking everybody for cancer on a yearly basis? And, it's like, well, we don't have to break this out every single time. Now, there's also the argument that there is, a certain percent of false positives that can happen that will cause people to think that they have cancer when they actually don't. And so there's that whole aspect as well, which can happen depending on how you're doing testing and who the equipment, like whoever is the person doing the testing. If you have people that are untrained and you're just giving them equipment, I mean, you can be going out and you can be falsely diagnosing problems of ductwork when it's not the case, if they're not trained up on it. And the more complexity that you add to them, the more difficult it can be. Now, TrueFlow is very simple to use, and it can be taught, but it still has some caveats that, you can't, like, you need to have probe placement matters, I would say, more, just because you're getting more information, and the more information that you're getting, the more, potential for wrong information that you can get.
Mhm, mhm.
It is also based. This argument is based on an assumption that HVAC alone will fix the problems, and
Yeah.
That is very true.
doesn't always. I mean,
Yep.
Nope. That's why we have all the other tools.
Yeah.
right?
Learn to
And
recognize the symptoms and know what to test for when you
yeah,
when you
and that's
reach
why
that
we
level.
charge
Yeah.
for
Yes.
for a
Well, I
couple
mean,
of
like,
times. That's why.
going back to the healthcare industry thing, like my wife's a nurse, and a lot of times they do testing to cover their butt to responsibly avoid responsibility, but they send you a bill for
Yeah.
Right.
it. I mean, they don't
Yeah.
just do it.
Mm.
You're getting a bill for it, or your insurance company is, or whatever.
Yes.
Right.
And
That's
to
what
me,
HVAC insurance.
There you go.
Yeah.
And we'll
Man.
need a whole new government program to cover it.
Yes.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, to me, and I mean, this is it kind of gets a little, I guess, foggy in the way that you kind of look at it, but like, there is this, I mean, obviously, like, the industry sucks. The status quo is shit. Most people doing work out there, they suck and they don't know what they're doing. That's just the end of it. So it kind of creates this opposite end of the spectrum of, okay, in order to change this, we need to be doing excellent work, which we should all be striving for excellent work. But see, the problem is you start stacking on all of these services, like everyone's kind of said multiple times before. You might be performing these tests for free, but it's not for free. The only way that you can stay in business to do that is you're going to have to start loading in your back end. So it's like now, like Reedy just did a 50, or say you're doing this change out. It's going to be either 20,000 or 30,000, depending on what option they go with. Well, if you're doing all this additional testing for free, that's not a $20,000 or $30,000 option anymore. That's
Oh,
a
it's gonna be the
$25,000 to $35,000 option.
or it might be the 50, like the one where he actually did the
Yeah.
diagnostic.
So there's all these things that starts adding more money into it. And so then the question is, okay, well, if we're trying to fix the industry, shouldn't we be trying to offer this for anyone, for as many people as possible? Like, obviously, you can't be giving away green speeds for dirt cheap. It's not possible. But we as contractors, if we can work at becoming as efficient as we possibly can, to where we can perform this work as cheap as we can and still be profitable, we're just opening up healthy, comfortable homes to more people who wouldn't have otherwise. And, it's great and wonderful if you can perform work really well, but the real question is, can you do it at scale and do it to where more people have the ability to get to it, not just the super high end people who are going to go, oh, I'm going to drop $50,000 on a system change out just because I have the money.
And not everybody can afford it.
Nope.
Yeah.
What do we do for those in the lower levels, lower income levels, who could never afford to pay for all of that testing? We still want to do a decent job for them,
Yes.
even if it's single stage, but let's make it the right size.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's my sentiment. Like, I don't care if you're a CEO of I'm doing a job for the CEO of the local hospital here. Unlimited amount of money. Like, he don't care, just do it. But I also do work for people that don't have no means. And like, so I'm going to, if I want to get work consistently throughout the year, every year for decades, then I can't just work for the CEO of AMED. He's not going to provide enough work for me. Or with people of his means. I mean, he does recommend me to do other stuff, but I'm not going to offer a bunch. I will still offer it to everybody, but I mean, a lot of people can't afford it.
Yeah.
So I would rather me replace the box than some other jackleg do it.
Yes. And in order to do that, like, for you to do that type of work, you have to be able to basically remove, like, if you imagine what the perfect install looks like, if you're going to replace everything, every single step. In order to cut those costs down, you have to start eliminating things. And so the real question, so the real question becomes, like, obviously, there are things you can eliminate, but there's some things you can. I'm okay with eliminating not doing a true flow grid test on a system versus not pulling a good vacuum. There's like really
Right.
figuring out what those things are. Because like, I
Yeah.
mean, Elon Musk, he talks about in his manufacturing and his what they call his algorithm of that you should, if you're not rolling back 10%, you've not deleted enough when it comes to aiming for efficiency. And I think for some of the problems of some of the quote, if you want to call them high performance contractors, is I think there's a lot of steps that they could be deleting in order to really make their process a lot more efficient, so then they can lower their prices and still make the same amount of money and get more people and be able to reach more people.
Yeah. They could, but they're still relying on other people to do that work, so they have to have a process.
Yeah. Well,
and I
yeah,
guess you
have
can
to have a
delete.
process for anything.
I mean, you can delete steps, but there's a reason for those steps.
Yeah. Well,
too,
and maybe you don't have to delete them. Maybe you can move them. Like what we've done with the free quote process is we've taken the comfort consult and things that have achieved really good results, and then we've just moved some of those steps instead of, hey, we got to do this beforehand, to, oh, we can do this afterwards if it's needed.
Right.
And so doing things like that, like you're becoming a lot more efficient, but you can still achieve the same exact results that you were before. And if you can do that, there's no reason why you shouldn't.
Yeah.
If they're doing all this testing up front and they're not charging for it, and they come up at the end and they do charge for it at the end, just don't name it. You have to wonder, where's the integrity? Why are they doing this in the first place?
Well, the fact of the matter.
So
Go ahead.
It's either because they have an ego that is outsized and they can't control it, or because they want to make them. It's a sleight of hand. It's smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
Nobody
the
does
fact
work
of the
for
matter.
free.
That
the fact of the matter is
either.
The fact of the matter is they're not doing it.
That's exactly right.
They're not out in the field working.
No.
The people that are saying you should do this for free are teachers, and those who can't teach is one of the things my grandfather taught me. So I fully appreciate teachers and stuff, but you're not going to tell me that.
That doesn't apply to all teachers.
No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. Because there are some really good teachers
who have experience. Yeah.
Yes, there are.
The fact is that they're not going to do a duct test and a blower door test and run a load and give an estimate in any amount of time that someone's going to want them to stay at their house when they've got an emergency and they want something done. It's not going to happen.
No, it's not.
Well, and another aspect is, for many people who express an interest in electrification, once they find out how much this may cost them, they back down.
I looked into a Tesla shingle roof.
Yeah.
it's like $98,000 or something.
Right.
Yeah, I think I'll go a different route.
The sales call is being paid for one way or another. A free sales call is being paid for one way or another.
100%.
So unless you're going to push all of that into the overhead and raise your rates on everybody else, you can't do those things without being paid for it.
Yeah, and then you're hurting the people that are at the bottom of the spectrum. That there's nothing. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them. I don't mind working for them. A lot of times, I prefer to work there versus other places.
Tanner, let's take a look at those true flow reports, which doesn't really have anything to do with electrification. This was already an all-electric house. This was a service call. This is the first test. This was a service call, and in visually looking at their ductwork, It was a 3.5. You can see it was a 3.5 ton heat pump, single stage. The return air drop was 8 by 20. And there was one additional 6-inch metal duct through the wall for a return. So in looking at my estimated airflow on my duct chart, I saw that they were going to be 720 CFMs for the trunk and another 85 CFMs. And our total airflow came out to almost precisely that. 823 CFMs was the actual measurement. But I saw that the blower wheel was dusty. So we can take a look. Oh, also, now just the static pressure, 0.33. No, excuse me. Total
0.37.
0.37. We'll call it 0.4.
Yeah.
And that would have, in many cases, you would have said, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the blower wheel was a little dusty. So I gave him a cost for pulling the blower and cleaning the blower wheel and the housing. They said yes. Let's see, what else was there on this chart that was important? Those were the three main things. Let's go to the other one, the other report.
And this was in the next report. What work did you perform?
All I did was clean the blower wheel.
Just clean the blower wheel. Okay.
Just cleaned the blower wheel. No changes. It was already on high speed. And when I put it back in, It was so much louder because now, as you can see, our total static pressure was, I'm looking for it over in the right-hand column.
0.8.
0.8.
Yes.
So it doubled. And our total airflow now is where it belongs. So they're now actually getting 3.5 tons of performance instead of 2 tons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's impressive.
What's crazy about this is just cleaning the blower wheel. I mean, what's that? That's like a 300 CFM difference.
Yeah,
and
we're talking a 30 or 40% improvement in airflow.
Yeah, I was about to say that's a 40% increase in airflow there.
Yes,
just off of cleaning the blower wheel. Which
So do you think that'll save them money?
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, I don't know, Ken, if you followed my post on HVAC Talk about that system that I ended up replacing.
Did you wrap that up?
Well, I replaced it. I still hadn't gone back and done a heating check because it was like 75 degrees when
okay. Yeah,
did
I have
the
not
thing.
seen the update. I knew,
but
you
I
were
did,
waiting for
and
equipment.
Wayne Pendergast, he had suggested that I move one of the taps.
Wayne's sharp. Yeah.
One of the taps to reduce system effect.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, I know from experience that he was right, and
sure,
I was gonna do it just because. And so I did it before I replaced it, and it reduced. I'm going off memory, but it reduced the total external static pressure, or it reduced the supplier static pressure by like 0.16, I think.
Oh.
And it reduced the blower amperage from 3.6 to 1.9 on an X13 blower.
And with this,
right at its top
that
end.
that one move of the duct from coming right off the beginning of the plenum.
Yeah, too close to the plenum. Yeah, too close to the.
It was creating a bunch of turbulence there.
Yep.
So
wow,
I mean,
I'll have to go back.
Very small improvements near the system can have a dramatic impact on.
Oh yeah.
External static pressure, airflow, efficiency, all of the above.
And as you can see right here, I mean, even on this one Ken showing, like 0.52 of the static pressure is coming from just the return side. So that's why, really,
it's that 20 by 8 drop.
Yeah, I strongly feel that if you're replacing a system at all, you should, at a minimum, be heavily recommending a big air drop with a large media filter. At a minimum, I include it, and I offer to do a downgrade if they don't want it. And that way I'm going to say, hey, like, just so you know, you want to downgrade this, right? You want a lesser result, right? Okay, just checking. Because, that's just one of I mean, in terms of, if you want to call it a low hanging fruit,
Mhm.
large returns is probably the most low hanging fruit you can do in HVAC
Yeah.
when it comes to replacing equipment, just because of
Yes.
it's such a problematic area,
Yeah.
and you can really resolve a lot of your, static prep. Because, I mean, I don't know about everyone else, but I know me personally from my experience of looking at supply ducts of, if especially if I'm downsizing, supply duct work is usually very manageable. At a minimum, I mean, it might be put together poorly, so you might have to like seal it up. You may have to pull some flex tight or replace some flex. But for the most part, supply ducts tend to be like very manageable.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's the return side that's the problem.
Yeah.
Usually, if the supply's an issue, it's noticeable within 4 feet of the outlet of the air handler.
Yeah. You'll
Yeah.
see that they've got an 8x12 trunk for
Yeah.
their 80,000 BTU furnace.
Or like even changing from flat taps to taper taps or
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Positive.
transitions,
Yep.
like
Mm-hmm.
just like coming out with an elbow and then going up and into the bottom of a square trunk or something. Like you can make that like 150 feet equivalent less by just
You got
fixing
Good
that.
night,
See you,
Reedy.
Reedy.
See you, Reedy.
Well, we're probably close to wrapping this up too.
Yeah, we may go
But
ahead
this,
and start.
I liked that true flow test because it shows it really does have value.
Oh yeah.
But
Mhm.
I could see from
Well,
looking at it.
yeah.
Mhm.
Now, in
Well,
fact, the discussion that I had with the husband, they were both there, but the husband said, "Oh no, when they told me when they put this system in that the ductwork was properly sized." And I showed him, I said, "Look, as a preliminary, here's my chart. This is what I think we're going to find when we test it." We tested it, and it nailed my estimate of airflow
Mhm.
as it
yeah.
was. And then, and by the way, this blower wheel was not dirty. I've seen plenty of dirty blower wheels. This was a dusty blower wheel.
It just had like some buildup in the cups of the
That was all.
veins,
And it really wasn't that much buildup,
right?
but making that blower wheel spick and span brought it to
Mm-hmm.
this. And that's where a static pressure test and a blower chart will be
Mhm.
accurate. But if it's not perfectly clean, you cannot count on that result.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, like the blower wheel is really the only thing you can't test pressure drop against. Like a dirty
Right.
coil or a dirty
Secondary heat
secondary
exchanger. Yep.
or a dirty filter, you can check that with static pressure. The only thing you really can't is the wheel itself because that's where everything originates. So,
That's where work happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
but at the same time, if you go up to a system and it's got 0.3 and you can look and you look at the duct and you're like, there ain't no way this thing
Mm-hmm.
is 0.3. Something's going on. But that's where you can't send a Walmart
Yeah.
employee out to with
Precisely.
three
Yeah.
hours of training with a
And
true
Chuck in
flow
a
grid.
truck won't know it either.
No, and they don't care.
Right. All they're doing is selling something for wages.
They're just trying to get by
Mm-hmm.
and put gas in their truck and whatever.
Yep. And that's why there are so many poorly performing systems out there.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Well, that's where I think, because like my True Flow grid, I use it predominantly in service. Like I
Mhm.
said, for installs, like I mean, I'll use them for startups, but that's really it. But service, it is good, especially if you're doing something where, and I'm sure everybody's run into this, where you're going to be keeping the existing equipment, but you're making changes around the equipment. You
Yep.
know,
Mhm.
that's where the utility of a precise measurement really, that's where the value really comes in heavy. Like having no, like what you caught here, Ken, like this is something where that value is very crucial and very beneficial in knowing exactly what it is, because it's very difficult. The actual execution of it is
Yep.
where
Yeah.
that kind of comes from.
So I've got a flow hood. So if I like say that I'm going to increase this size of this duct to get more air to this room or whatever, then I can measure that directly.
Yeah.
Flow hoods have their pitfalls as well, but
yeah. And what's the cost of a flow hood? It's $2,000.
Yeah, I know. So but I already have that. It's an Alnor, whatever the hell.
Yeah.
And so why should I go out and spend another $2,000 for this tool?
Well, this was a system problem an equipment problem rather than an individual branch problem.
Yeah,
so
but
the right tool for the job is
that's
what we're talking about.
I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I feel like I could have. I don't know, if it wasn't very dirty, I might not have recommended cleaning.
I probably, before I realized how severe a very slight coating of dust could be, I wouldn't have cleaned it either. Yeah. But having done it before, I knew what I was going to get with it.
Right.
So that's why it's worth presenting this way.
Yeah. And with the report we're seeing right here, it's a lot harder of an argument to make that this is really useful, just because if we look right here, we have a 0.8 static pressure, but if we look at our gauge, we're right in the green. Yeah. You know, we're on the top side. We're fine, ain't we? Yeah. What's the problem here?
See, I don't really go into the whole report thing with my customers usually, because most of them just glaze over and they're like,
yeah,
all right, it's fixed, right?
Yeah. Well,
how much?
Yeah.
Well, this one was useful. And because cleaning a blower wheel doesn't take that long, and I could immediately show the change to the husband in particular, who was the one who was interested in the numbers. He said, I can't argue with the data.
Right. Which, hey, I'm always for backing up.
Yep.
Backing up your whatever assumptions with the results.
You make a claim and then you prove it.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Which now that you can actually adjust some of these to where you can, accurately show what's green, yellow, and red. This report's a lot more useful. And I will say, in terms of showing the report to the customer, showing this one in particular, maybe if I was doing like a duct focused something,
some upgrades.
Yeah. I would, but really I like Measure Quick's Vitals report. I mean, there's some things that I don't like about it, like some of the terms and, things like that. But I will say I do like being able to present a report that shows like a grade or a rating to the homeowner because to me, there's kind of two things that I'm looking at doing whenever I complete a job. I'm either looking to, hey, I found problems and I'm going to, see what you think about this. I'm either looking for them to buy, repair. So then, that's the whole reason we're in business, is to make repairs and improve stuff. Either that, or for them to go, okay, I recognize that this is a problem, but I don't want to do anything. So then that way, if they call back again, I'm not having to come back out for free. And with the reports, I like it because I can go, hey, like, sure, it's working, but, we're looking like at a C-. There's several things that could really help. And if anything goes wrong with your system, it could really cause some issues. And so then, you leave it that way. If they understand in a better sense, visually, and especially if you send a report to them to where it's, hey, this is documented. Here's what I left you with. Here's what you're working with. If something goes wrong, just know that it's because you chose to not do anything.
Yep.
So then you don't have to go back out for free because they're going, hey, you fixed my unit and you said everything was good to go. You said there was a few things, but it don't really matter. But, homeowners are going to skew it every which way they can if you're not extremely explicit. And so to me, reports offer that way of being very explicit. So that way you don't have to go back and either do free work, and you can just, more easily express and illustrate what's going on with their system.
Yeah.
I mean, the same percentage that will buy the best of the best, no matter what, is probably the same percentage of people that are going to scrutinize you fixing their air conditioner. Like, I don't see that as this huge issue.
Yeah, I mean,
Like, you go out, you fix their air conditioner, it's fixed. They pay you.
yeah.
That's usually it. I mean, it's like, I don't
Well,
need
so
to.
so
I
you
don't
really
need to
never
spend that. Like, as far as efficiency, like you were talking about, like, I don't need to spend, like, and be honest. Does it take 10 minutes if you got to drill 4 holes and take static pressure and put this thing in, find a place to put this thing in the thing? Does it take 10 minutes?
uh
Somewhere you've never been before, and the damn filter slot on the air handler might be mastic shut in an attic or a crawl space 40 feet away from the door. No, it doesn't.
yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, it can. There are times where, things are more accessible. You've already been there, so on and so forth. But there's also times where it's in an attic, it's in a difficult spot that is a pain in the ass to get to, and
And
it's
they
a
might
40-minute endeavor.
and they might have 17 low sidewall returns that,
Yeah.
I mean, how are you going to do that? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
I mean, there's extremes to every situation, but like,
Well, but it comes down to using the right tool at the right time. So that's
right,
why I'm just not a fan of universal, hey, here's what you do every single time. It's like,
right.
okay, sure, well, you can do that, but how efficient is that going to be? And is it actually, truly beneficial?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's a good tool. If Steven Rogers is watching and he'd like to send me one to test, I'm down. But I don't have a Minneapolis manometer, so I'm gonna also need a DG8 or 1000 or whatever the hell it
1000's
is.
pretty sweet.
So
Yeah.
I'm gonna need one of those too.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I'll just stick with my go-to. I've got several manometers. My go-to is that little Testo 510, I think it is. Like the old one it's not Wi-Fi. It's probably 15 years old, and it drifts a little bit, but you got to know how to use it. And the battery door sucks, but it does the thing. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it does the job.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I probably paid like
Pretty nice.
$70 for it, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Retrotech, they have a kind of it's a DG8 type competitor. It doesn't have Bluetooth. It's just digital readout, blah blah blah. But it's a like precision manometer, and
I've got a DM2.
Okay.
Okay. That's an earlier one. What are they up to now? DM32?
Yeah.
Yeah, DM32X, I believe.
I think I mean, I bought it with the blower door in like, I'm gonna say 2008 or 9. So
yeah, they both.
But it's still, I mean, it still does. I mean, like I can read zonal pressures or whatever else I need to use it for. If I need that, but I don't really need it very often.
Yeah. All right. So the summary is equipment sizing is critical. Downsize from the old oversized equipment.
And it'll probably fit the ducts.
Yep. Especially if you can assess any of the supply duct in particular, and the return duct is likely to be upgradable to make it appropriate for the new.
Usually just the drop. Like if you're talking about in Ohio with a basement or anywhere in the north with a basement, just that 28 by 8 drop, increase it to 20 by 20 and put a 20 by 25 filter, or increase it to 20 by 25. Put a 20-25 filter in.
Nice slow airflow through the filter.
Yeah.
You're in good shape.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say we're going to wrap it up here.
Okay.
Well, thanks everybody for coming. It was a good show. We talked about a lot of things, a lot of hot topics at the moment. So always a fun time.
Yep.
And we'll catch everybody next Monday.
Thanks, guys.
Good night.